Okay. Hi, everyone. Once again, I'm Janine Carlino. It's so nice to be here with you. I love that we're an all women show today. This is exciting. You're my people. Yeah, so as Ron said, I'm going to walk you through chronologically through my creative path. And I am excited to share any questions and insights that you have after and to share more about my work visually. So I'm going to start with childhood. um, so this is me at the age of 5, and I'm in my grandparents' front yard. And I included this picture because my grandparents' home was a big, like the early beginnings of where I drew inspiration from. Their home was like a little museum to me. They collected Mesoamerican and Native American art. And so they had a lot of paintings and sculptures and textile designs. And they even had a garden in the backyard. I helped my grandpa and my grandma garden and pick off like the chiles and the little heirloom tomatoes. And it was a really, really important time in the development of my early life. And my grandpa would draw with me. I remember that. He taught me how to draw my name and handwriting at the age of 5. And I enjoyed drawing. I was one of 4 siblings, so my parents were really busy. And I was never like formally trained or anything, but there was always a lined piece of paper and a pen or a pencil. So one of my hobbies was to hibernate in my room. I had my own room, and I had a boom box, and I would collect CDs, and I would listen to music, and I would draw. And you'll notice that I like drawing women, and these are the early beginnings of my women. uh, I also like drawing accessories and patterns, and I love hair, and so it's funny to look back and see the early markings of that. I also love creating my own hand lettering, so also I can see the early developings of that. And portraiture, I love portraiture. So this is me in high school, and in high school I went to a high school where there was an animation program. And although I wasn't at all interested in animation, I really enjoyed like developing a community of other creative minds and thinkers. And um, they really pushed figure drawing in high school because that was part of, getting into animation. You needed to really be good with your gestures and form. So the friends that I had forged the relationships. We would go to a figure drawing workshop in North Hollywood on the weekends, and we would figure draw. And so at the age of 16, I started to figure draw and started developing a sketchbook. And I, just sort of drew from life. That was how I started. I didn't have any kind of vision or imagination really. But drawing from life worked for me, and just kind of getting, using that raw talent to practice carried me. And so I also took a Saturday High class at Art Center because they really pushed Art Center in high school. So I had awareness of Art Center College of Design, and I knew about Saturday High classes. So I took a figure drawing class there, I think my senior year. And then after that, I had some kind of guidance that, I needed to develop a portfolio in order to go to Art Center. And I knew I wasn't ready to go to Art Center. So I went to Mount San Antonio College, which was a local college to where I grew up. And I spent 3.5 years at Mount Sac, and I focused on my general ed because I didn't know that I wanted to go to Art Center yet, but I knew that I wanted to go to an art school. And I knew that it would be less expensive if I could transfer my general ed units. So I did that, and I also took, foundation courses, basic drawing, a lot of figure drawing. And just kind of started to develop my portfolio. Um, I would also, with my friends that were in figure drawing classes with me, we would go to art center figure drawing classes after. We would sneak into the workshops and go figure draw there. And, that kind of was a motivator for me because although I wasn't still intimidated by art center, at least I had some kind of connection. Like I could see, like, okay, this is what people do. This is the building that I'm going to be walking down. It started to get me excited, and it really drove me to stay focused at Mount Sac. I really spent that few years just refining my portfolio and getting enough confidence to apply for a scholarship. I went to the zoo and I love orangutans. I had an affinity for orangutans. So I had a little membership, and I would take advantage of that. And I would do this on my own. I'd go to coffee shops. This is like one of the very first innovative type of drawings. We're back to that woman drawing the woman. Clearly it was in my beginnings. It was in my developings as visually what I wanted to absorb my time into creating. But I'm also just kind of playing around. I can't even remember what I was inspired by. But I mean, I know for sure that I'm trying to get fresh with my penmanship and my line quality and even form. I mean, symmetry, cross hatching. I remember I was into wrinkles, and I was into elongating the figure too. I remember that. But I was figure drawing the whole time and learning just how to really refine my craft when it came to form, line quality, gestures. I was also looking at like what my teachers were doing, and I was doing research, looking at books, and I also took Art Center at Night courses. I took an intro to illustration class and a head painting class because I had zero confidence when it came to painting. Up until now, I had not painted at all. So that was cool too because that gave me a little bit more clarity on what illustration was, because I didn't even know what I was going to be majoring. Like, what was illustration? That was the major that was offered. And so those courses helped me just to kind of give me more confidence and awareness. So I finally applied for that scholarship, got the scholarship, took advantage of the Pell Grant and the Cal Grant, and I got some financial aid, and I was ready to go to Art Center. I was 22 going on 23 when I started Art Center, and this is me in my little corner of my the house that I shared with my housemates that are still today very good friends of mine. And this was my workspace area, um, and I spent a whole lot of time here. The first half of Art Center was focused on really honing in on my foundation skills. Again, I had no vision. I just, but I was really good at painting from life, drawing from life, I should say. I would go to coffee shops with friends. This was at a poetry lounge. This is, drawing from life, and, just getting really, really confident with my markings, my line quality, playing with different styles. This is done with like a Japanese brush pen outside of the Grand Central Market in downtown LA. And something I really recall about Art Center was just being absorbed in a bubble and drawing inspiration from everything that you're absorbed in, your friends, what they're creating, your teachers, the books they're sharing with you, the artists they're opening your minds to. um, there was a look of the moment, so to speak, and so I was really just trying out different things. I had absolutely no sense of a style. I was just having fun and kind of being an open portal to trying out different things. But I will say that drawing was my main love. Didn't have very strong confidence with paint or color yet, but I did practice. I did try. This was acrylic ink. one thing that I developed early on, a knowing of myself, is that I like still to this day to blend mediums together. I'm big on mixed media. So here, this is acrylic ink blended with this is like white gel pen, I think, and some, what are those Japanese really thin pens, high tech pens. I'm just kind of blending together mixed mediums. And these are also illustration assignments. Uh, but my main love is always drawing because I can get lost with a pencil and a paper any day. But yeah, I'm looking at what other people are doing. I sort of had this cartoon sort of graphic style. Um, this was an etching. I took a printmaking class. Really loved etching. Um, I think this was based on a song. I don't remember which one, but it was like a based on a lyric. Practicing different application techniques that you learn in classes. Um, something. Yeah. Oh, very nice. Something I remember, or no, something that permeates throughout my work, even to this day, that I could see started back when, was my love and appreciation for the city. So you're going to see a lot of city environments. And the reason for that is because I was born and raised in the San Gabriel Valley, but I had little connections to the city. My grandma lived in East LA. Both my parents were born and raised in East LA. And my aunt, when I was little, would take me on the bus to the toy district in downtown LA. And I just remember being so fascinated by LA, especially coming from like a much slower paced environment. I also remember specifically anytime I would see the train go by and all the box cars with the graffiti, I always remember just being so attracted to the colors and the shapes, because I didn't really know anybody that did stuff like that. So the city is a main subject in a lot of my work. You're also going to notice like a cultural influence starting to seep through my work. Obviously, my background is I'm Mexican American, and those early beginnings of spending a lot of time at all my all my family gatherings, uh, absorbing all this artwork in my grandparents' home, I could see how prevalent it was in, my markings at this time. This is inspired by East LA, and when I look at this piece, I can see the influences that my friend's artwork was also taking on too. And again, back to that whole concept of being in a bubble, like we're all just sort of uh, rubbing off on each other's inspiration, and it was really exciting actually. But I don't look at this and think, oh yeah, this is my style. This is a lithograph, so that was fun to explore that application process. Yeah, this I kind of start to see me here a little bit. This is me at 3 a.m. Pulling all nighters because that's very indicative of my time at Art Center, was pulling all nighters. But I was also doing it with my friends, so it was like normal to be up at all hours of the night and just drinking coffee. Like, what was I doing? But I had, something that I remember about Art Center was knowing intuitively that this was a precious, reserved time of my life. And I really, really took advantage of like making the absolute most of it. I mean, also, you're paying a lot of money, right? It's expensive. So I took it very seriously. But I did not take care of myself. There was no time to. So this now segues into the second part of my art center education, which is where you are now inspired to come up with concepts and an actual vision of what you wanted to create. I was like 25, 26, and I am a late bloomer still to this day. Um, I didn't really know what I wanted to create. I got so comfortable drawing from life that now that I had to come up with actual vision, it was like I had to really dig deep. And I thought about my childhood, because that was authentic to me. And I thought about specifically, I thought about my cousin, who, early on was a very important figure in my life. She was a protector to me. Um, she was sort of like a maternal energy, and she was also a teenage mother, and she was a chola. And a chola is a female gang member. So she clearly went down a menacing path. Um, and I wanted to revere her and glorify her as I remember her, as I knew her to be, even though she was attached to this culture. And she used to hang out next to this payphone at the park. And anytime somebody would bully me, she was always there to protect me. And so this kind of opened a portal up to a series of work where at least now I had something to work with. And I you're going to see a pattern of me using myself as reference. So I started, friends would help me, we'd do these like little photo shoots, or sometimes I'd take photos of them to paint them. And again, inspired by East LA, this middle apartment building is my grandma's, where she lived, and my dad grew up there. And I would actually end up living there years later to have that full circle moment. Um, yeah, walking around my grandma's neighborhood, collecting research, getting inspired. And it was exciting because, I had something to draw upon, expand upon. And this was a school assignment inspired by Frida Kahlo. And, she's recovering from a wounded heart, a broken heart. And yeah, I wanted to give a voice and give uh, an offering to these women. I, I feel like that's still something that is important to me to this day. I want my women to be heard, no matter if it's a made up character that I come up with, or no matter if I'm depicting an actual, person. So this is done with graphite, acrylic inks, which I started using a lot of acrylic inks. I loved that you can layer up the, start transparent, I guess kind of like watercolor, but they act differently than watercolors. But I like the way they worked with drawing. I think that's why I enjoyed using them so much. This is funny because this is a happy accident. I started the face on a part of the page that I realized after I drew her, I didn't want her there. I wanted her a little bit to the left. So I just decided, well, let me go ahead and just draw her to the left. And I think I was going to erase the other side, but then I liked the way that looked. And then I thought, well, if I'm going to draw two faces, I may as well draw three to kind of give like a dimensional look, a 3D vibe. And so that was fun. I did that with color pencil, and the hair is with color pencil and acrylic ink. And then I started incorporating mail envelopes. And I love power lines. That kind of falls into the whole connection I have to the city. This is done with a big pen. Just trying to challenge myself, with shading and being tedious. Patterns. I mean, ever since I was little, I loved looking at patterns. And once I got to an age to where I started coming up with my own patterns and being able to dream them up, I really stayed with that. To this day, I still really love creating patterns. I mean, I'm finding reasons to come up with patterns too. I'm really into symmetry too, you'll notice. And my ruler is a big a tool that I use in a lot of my work. This was a stencil. Well, this was done with graphite, but with the intention of turning it into a stencil. I think this also kind of interacted with my connection to wanting to like be in the city and taking photos and getting inspiration, but also being inspired by what a lot of my friends were doing. Some of my friends were doing stencils, so I felt called to do my own. So I'm going out and taking photos of the city, and I'm also throwing up these stencils. This is a school assignment. This is done with gouache. I'm still trying to keep it universal, not so honed in on my women, and kind of trying to expand a bit. And I also was started showing with a gallery about a year, my last year of art center, and it was a really good experience to be showing. But kind of looking back, uh, I could see how it was a little conflicting for me because at the time that I was in school, I told you earlier that I was just really absorbing information and trying to learn. And now I was responsible for, you know, showing. And I started to get a little bit of anxiety around that and a little bit overwhelmed, because there was a lot going on already with, my classes and stuff. But I mean, it was fun. I mean, I did this for the art show, and then this was a large scale piece. Um, it's what you're seeing. It's an abstraction of East LA. Um, it's it's continuing on with that conversation of me wanting to connect with the city, something that I felt so drawn to, and also I'm exploring with all different mediums. There's a lot of paper collage. There's even some photography, that some of those photos that I took, I would print them and then photo collage them in. A lot of it is painted. Those are punched punched, like Home Depot paint swatches. And my friend's dad was architect, so he had like these blueprint paper sheets. So I threw some of those in there. Really just having fun. And I want to say towards the end, yeah, towards that last year, I felt really called to do this little series of Zapatista women. And this was like a guerrilla movement of women that were revolting from the disenfranchisement that they were faced with in the jungles of Chiapas, Mexico, where they are from. And I was really drawn to the dichotomy of how beautifully adorned they would dress, but in conjunction with the hardships that they had to face and the resilience that they carried as women, and also kind of feeding into that feeling that I wanted them to be heard and seen. And I'm also just having fun. It's like, I remember I went to Tijuana. I would take terms off every now and then, and I went to Tijuana with a friend, and I collected these scraps on the floor, and it was really cool to be able to like incorporate that into the piece, because I put a lot of soul into these paintings. I had the time to. I just had time, so I was just throwing darts, just putting a bunch of. There's a lot of energy that was going into this work, and it really speaks to where I was at the time. I myself was seeking inner strength through these women. So this is a photo of me, the silhouette, and then I would turn it into a stencil, and then I'd cut it out and put it into the piece. So, there was this frenetic, kind of intense energy. I talked about the anxiety that I was developing earlier. I think a lot of that was going into my work, because, my time at Art Center was coming to a close, and I had to, start to think about what was going to happen after Art Center. This was an abstraction, like an abstraction of the jungle of Chiapas. This is a digital painting, but it's like intermixed with drawings and photos like that I would scan, um, and also I'm just trying to learn Photoshop more. This piece is done with color pencil and acrylic and graphite. I've never considered myself to be a painter. I mean, I do consider myself today to be a painter, but I'm not trying to be an alla prima painter with the oil where you like blend around the paints and paint all loose. I mean, maybe one day, but you know, I this is how I paint. I'm very tight, and so the idea of being able to fuse together drawing and painting really excites me. So this is the end of art center, and you know, I was her. I was this, very free young woman, just on this adventure, not no worries, and I'm really grateful that I had the time I did to spend, really just exploring. And now I had to figure out what was next. So I had to go through, you know, about a year of just really, looking inward and really like finally facing myself and, you know, taking care of myself, eating. I mean, I got so thin in art center. Now I was just taking it easy, relaxing, still working hard, but like I was also in a kind of a somber headspace, so I knew I had to treat that. Um, I was now working out of a shed. I had to move back in with my parents, and I made the most of it. Um, I was an artist assistant for a fine artist, so that was really cool because I was working with friends for this fine artist. I got that experience. I was also kind of coming to a close with an art show that I was working on for this gallery, and I knew that after that, I needed to take a little breather and just kind of, um, figure out like what kind of work I wanted to create now. I knew that I didn't want to do the cholas and zapatistas forever. And I didn't know what I wanted to do next, but I knew that I was seeking joy because I was kind of in this somber space. And so I started reading self-realization books and, just trying to connect with my spiritual side. And I was seeking upliftment and joy through work that felt light and bright to me. And I was also like starting to learn about mythologies, and these women are purple, because they're inspired by Hindu goddesses from mythology. And now I'm using like stencils, and again, just trying to receive joy, um, and maybe self love through the works that I was creating. You know, really honing in on that healing quality, the maternal being, even within myself. I wasn't a mother then, but inherently, I was connecting with these women. I made these and I gave them to like my loved ones, all the women, important women in my life. Uh, so this now segues into my self love warriors, I call them. Um, I was still kind of seeking strength and love through my work, and I came across, this scholar and author that focused on mythology and world religions, and his name is Joseph Campbell. And he talks about the hero's journey, and it's a universal story where, you know, the hero is, or in my case, the heroine is living a life of complacency and boredom, and she needs more. And so she is called to action to go on a life conquest. Um, and she goes on this whole, challenging conquest. And eventually she faces the dragon and she defeats the dragon, and she comes out on the other side. and now she can be of love and service to others. And so I thought that was like so amazing. I thought, well, let me now incorporate that into this body of work, where I'm creating these sort of mythological, otherworldly, um, warrioress energies. And, I'm playing with patterns and doing a lot of the stuff I was doing before, doing stencils. I'm still using acrylics. I'm just having fun. I've talked about patterns and yeah, just really overall the strength. I mean, there's a lot of things going on. I'm inspired by like Nordic mythology, Japanese armor, Native American headdresses, uh, Eastern Indian miniature paintings, the patterns, really fusing together a lot of different elements and cultures and religions, mythologies. There's a collective consciousness that Joseph Campbell talks about, where, a lot of the cultures and mythologies and religions, there's like a universal language. And also, I'm seeking a lot of spirituality, and I'm kind of gaining that through the stuff I'm reading. That's me in the shed. This is done with, I stenciled, no, did I masked, yeah, no, I stenciled these, painted this part, and then this part, I started to draw with the X-Acto knife. So the scoring that you see on top of the painted flowers is the gesso coming through from behind. I like to do that a lot with a lot of my work. Some of these women are nurturing healing energies, other of them are more nefarious and fiercer, resilient energies. And I also was, using myself as reference. That was actually on the balcony of the apartment that my grandma lived in that I showed you in that previous painting. Now I'm living there. And this is Ninja Grace. She's done with silver leaf, paper collage, color pencil, ink. I think I was thinking about like the duality within us all, the good and the bad. This is titled Traversing the Stratosphere, and they are transcending to the next level of consciousness, and they are transferring dimensions to elevate. And that's where I was at. I was trying to evolve cosmically, and this is titled Invasion of Narf. And so these women are battling the mental parasites in their minds, um, those that consist of insecurities and fears and, lack mentality, depression, anxiety. And also, my husband and I had a roach problem in our Koreatown apartment. So I was, battling off that reality. And I'm also really inspired by Joshua Tree, or the desert in general, but this was specifically Joshua Tree. I would also go to the desert, and sometimes I had like a friend in New Mexico, so I would go to the different parts of New Mexico and go explore those environments. I'm now starting to get into goddess religion, which I'm going to talk more about. But there's certain subject matter that is representative of goddess religion, the double axe being one of them, blending together the animal and the human form, the anthropomorphic form. And she's also inspired by the dark goddess Kali, the Hindu goddess Kali. Um, and then also the panther is big in goddess religion. So she's Panthera the huntress, and she's pretty fierce. And that's me, making these headdresses with a friend, just running around the desert. Follow your bliss is a mantra that I learned from Joseph Campbell, that author that I was talking about. And it's been sort of this pivotal mantra that I've walked through my journey with. Um, I've always remained consistent with following my bliss, even when it felt uncertain and uncomfortable. Yeah, so the goddesses. So now I'm starting to get into goddess religion, and I'm learning just a lot about the divine feminine within us all, and Mother Gaia, and getting in there with my spirituality, and also again blending together all these different inspirations that I was collecting. This is Papua New Guinea headdress, African, Japanese, Eastern Indian. I just, I was interested in face masks and face painting and headdresses, adornments, the jewelry they wore. This is an Egyptian, inspired by like Egyptian jewelry. And of course, feathers, floral, fauna, ferns, making my own headdresses. Also, I was into vintage hair. You'll notice I get lost in hair. I like just like blending away and rendering. Face painting was not so much these days, but at the time I had a moment with them. This is inspired by like Alice in Wonderland and Navajo paintings and vintage hairstyles, Egyptian jewelry, colors. I love acrylics because you can really get vibrant with colors. I love challenging myself. I never know what the colors are going to be until I start, one after the other. That's kind of the what excites me is not the unknowing. Let's see. Yeah, this is just a continuation of my moment with headdresses and goddess religion. The snake is a big symbol of goddess religion. Definitely inspired by Aztec glyphs. I remember I used to run in my neighborhood, and I remember I ran past this hair salon, and I saw this photo of a woman in this hair, this wrapped braid hairstyle, and I was just like, I need to paint. I need to do something with that. So I do that a lot. I would just take photos. Sometimes on my runs, I would stop. I lived in the city, so I would just stop and take photos of things. And yeah, me in Monument Valley in Utah, just embodying these goddesses that I was creating and sort of with exuding within myself. So alongside kind of creating this body of work that I had been focused on, I was also a Trader Joe's artist. And the subtitle of this is Inner Resistance and Acceptance, because I definitely went on a journey with my time at Art Center, sorry, Trader Joe's, where I sort of didn't want to be there, but appreciated being there. I spent 7 years there. I thought I was going to spend two. In my mind, I was just going to have this little part time job so that I could create this body of work, and then I was going to be a gallery artist. But that quickly changed when I started to realize that, oh, well, it's not that easy to be a gallery artist. Um, and, Trader Joe's was a really wonderful experience. I'm so grateful for my time there. For a variety of reasons, I learned a ton. I learned a lot about pastels and chalkboards, chalkboard art. I worked off the Sunset Strip. So we got to paint or draw a lot from musicians and kind of music influences. I learned a lot about advertising, marketing, hand lettering. I got real good with Posca paint markers, spray paint, the spray painted backgrounds. Um, I was doing a lot acrylic paint, I was again mixing mediums together, but now for a job, which is kind of cool. I was lending a lot of the skills I had already had to this job, and now I was also um, working for a company where I could be of service to. And something about Trader Joe's too was that there was a time crunch. You had to get these pieces done in a certain amount of time, so I got really good with my speed. And overall, they were fun. I would collect hand lettering books and learn about like different number styles, letter styles. And at some point in my time at Trader Joe's, I wanted more, and I started being vocal with my managers that I wanted to create larger work. And so they let me start working on like murals, like larger pieces, and that excited me. And I kind of shifted where I thought to myself, I need to just be grateful for my job. My job is great. I can make my hours. I can if I don't want to work on this day, I can ask for it off. That was the cool thing about having a part-time job was it was a malleable type of job to where I wasn't really confined to a 9 to 5 full-time job, and I could still have the freedom to work on my own craft. And I was finding reasons to incorporate my women into my projects, which was exciting. And um, this was a really cool piece that I got to work on. It was inspired by the Sunset Strip, and I got to engage with the community, the crew members, and some of the customers. I got to take photos of them and incorporate them into this, imagined landscape. So this was a time of towards the end of my Trader Joe's experience. I was talking about that hero's journey mentality earlier, and I sort of had my own call to action where I knew that it was time for me to end with arts and or Trader Joe's, but I didn't know when necessarily to quit because I mean it was a good job, for for a lot of reasons, and I grew to love my managers and just the community I was absorbed in. It was great. I got to do these fun, you know, projects, but I was expecting. So this was that final time to say goodbye to Trader Joe's, and this was a nice way to kind of give them a parting gift and you know figure out what to do now. And so this is where I kind of enter into that long adored self-employment freelance life now as a mom. And once I kind of took that bonding time with my child, then, I had to really start to learn what I wanted to do next in my life, like creatively, sustainably to work. And it was challenging. Prior to this moment, I would post my work that I was making, but I wasn't really like I didn't really have a strong social media presence because I was kind of busy with my work and then my off time creating, that I wasn't really connecting with the community, or I didn't really have an audience, so to speak. But once I entered this time of my life, I you know decided, okay, I want to create an online presence. I want to start an online shop. And it's so interesting the way all the stars started to align for me because, well, a few things happened. I started learning a lot about setting up my online shop. I learned a lot about SEO, search engine optimization, metadata, which is where you plug in really important information to your imagery about yourself, so that way when you post it, you're protecting your imagery. I learned a lot about keywords and hashtags. And then once I got and I'm doing a lot of research. I'm looking at a lot of tutorials to learn this stuff. And still to this day, I learn constantly as I go with the projects and the jobs I take on. I'm always learning. And so I started doing these craft fairs, and the savings I had from Art Center, I invested into um, getting a lot of art merchandise, and I was painting on these pots, and I invested into a printer. I was printing my own art prints, making my own wrapping paper, and doing market research through kind of seeing what people respond to, connecting with people. And around this time, too, there was this exhibit that I got invited to participate called When She Rises, and it was a women of color powerful exhibit with amazing women artists. And that was a really, perfectly aligned experience because I got to have like a launch event where I launched my online shop. And what was really, really beautiful about this time was, I talked about how earlier I was posting stuff but not really thinking much about it. And I think the reason I wasn't really focusing on it was because I still had a journey to walk through with developing my self-confidence. And you know the irony is that when I was finally ready to like display myself and show up for myself and promote my work, I already had an audience, and a lot of people knew about my work. And it was just so mind-boggling to me because it really goes to show like how we see ourselves sometimes, like that can really take over. You could start to really believe the narrative of feeling less than, and when it's actually not the reality. It was an illusion that whole time. And so once I started selling my work, it was easy because all these, I had like an audience, and now I was growing more of an audience, right? Because I was really pushing myself with these craft fairs, with these events, with pop-up. I started getting invited to pop-up shops and meeting people. And this was cool because they printed this at Spark LA, which is where the event was held in Venice. They printed this really large, and they promoted it to Venice Boulevard. So it's like I was like pinching myself, like, wow, this is incredible. I, started doing giveaways to really like launch, really promote myself, and learning all the little social media tricks, and doing pop up shops through this, doing more craft fairs. And through this experience, I developed a relationship with the Museum of Latin American Art. And still to this day, I every like 6 months they buy a bundle of my artwork and they sell it in their gift shop. And so this was a pop-up event that was held right next to Judy Baca's bicentennial exhibit. That was really exciting. This is an example of the type of bundles that they would buy. So I have since resigned from being on this hustle because it was definitely a season for this. I probably did this for a good 5 years, and it was amazing. But now I'm, kind of shifting into different stages of my career. But this, I mean, I was a workhorse. I mean, I was printing the prints myself, the greeting cards, and then I was outsourcing the magnets, the buttons, the stickers, the coasters, and yeah, selling them wholesale, not only to Mola, to different boutiques in Los Angeles, but Mola has been a long-standing relationship. This was a sort of like a gallery opening slash month-long pop-up shop that I had at Mi Vida Boutique in Highland Park. And what was really cool about this was I was able to have like a gallery opening, but also selling my merchandise all month long. Like you don't really, you know, something that, you know, I talk about is my creative career has taken such an unconventional path. Like, I it's almost as if, early on when I was trying to follow like the formulas of like climbing the ladders with showing in galleries, and it wasn't working for me. And so I just had to surrender and realize, you know what? I'm just going to follow the flow, and I'm going to talk more about that. Um, this is great. I was able to make money off the wall stuff and off my merchandise, and you know, develop the community, the connections. I love the owner of Mi Vida. She's amazing. And I'm also still trying to think marketably, and just creating. I went through a moment where I was creating like these musicians. Yeah, because I'm trying to like play around. It's like, how can I get illustration work? How can I like what else should I do? I was doing speed paintings. I still to this day love using Premiere Pro on Adobe and making little videos of my speed paintings. And so I would make these drawings or paintings and record them and then edit them and push them on social media. Mixing mediums, color pencil, paint, acrylic paint, Posca paint marker. I also really enjoy, I talked about earlier how I love creating patterns and specifically thinking about surface pattern design. I had a moment where I was thinking about being a surface pattern designer, and I still could see, like a pathway in that direction. But I see myself as broader than just a surface pattern designer. But it was nice to like learn how to do repeat patterns in Photoshop and Illustrator. Um, it's really hard. I'm sure there's easier ways, but it was challenging for me. I ended up having this printed on a jacket because when I came up with the concept, I thought about what it would look like on a jacket, so I had one made. And yeah, in my mind, it's like these could be like wallpaper or not so much wrapping paper, but I could see them on fabric, maybe an interior design. Um, this is done with it's like a Japanese paint that's a fusion of gouache and watercolor. Yeah, just for no reason other than to play with a new medium. And I also went through a phase where I was painting these pots and I was selling them at the craft fairs. So these are like stuff that I was posting on Instagram. Um, oh yeah, so then now that I'm sort of generating an audience, um, people are asking me to do personal commissions. And I showed you this earlier. So a client reached out to me and asked me to reinterpret my original mother and child piece. And so we both agreed that I would come up with sort of like a 2.0 version of her. And now I had a son. And so I thought, let me incorporate my son. Now that I'm a mother, let me create a mother and child piece with my son in it. And yeah, so this is the piece. And it was really fun to do. There I am scoring into the paint with, to bring out that gesso. I'm still using mail envelopes. I still collect mail envelopes. It's a little bit of a hoarding obsession. This is mainly acrylic paint, but also some gold leaf where the halos are. And it's inspired by Koreatown, which is where I was living. Still love the city, still love walking around and taking photos. This was inspired by somebody's grandmother. I use myself as reference. And she loved sitting in her backyard under her lemon tree. And the client's brother passed away, which was her grandmother's grandson. And so they often would talk about this hummingbird and how they felt like it was him visiting the grandmother. So, they gave me these little like stories and nuggets to work with. And I kind of just took off and took it in my own direction. This was a client's mother who passed away. and she loved being in her kitchen. And I had this Oaxacan apron, so I thought, ooh, I'm gonna use my Oaxacan apron, and you already know I love painting on pots, so I thought, oh, let me put one of my painted pots into the piece. And her mother had four daughters, and so the client told me after the fact that I had drawn these four flowers, she's like, oh my gosh, me and my sisters cried when we saw that because it represents us. And I didn't even know. It just was a kind of a serendipitous, experience. you know, this is interesting because I it's like I had no business. I'm not a muralist or a wall artist, or at the time I wasn't, but I could see. I feel like with all of you know where my path has gone, like there's always been these little early markings that end up filtering in later into my life. And I now, to this day, I have a calling to where I want to start getting into public art, not with spray paint, but I want to work large. And it's funny to look back, a few years ago and see like, oh wow, like it was probably, percolating even then. So now I'm getting into taking on client work for more like companies. And I got asked to create this digital illustration for a Zapatismo show, art, like a collective show where they were going to have um, a lot of photos and artwork that they were going to, uh, you know, put an exhibition up of. And it was a Zapatismo member was going to um, put the show together. And so I felt honored that they asked me to promote it with this digital illustration. And this was for an application. I applied for Metro LA for Downey, or I didn't realize that they were going to select me, but they selected me to create for Downey, and I got selected. And I incorporated a painting I did of my grandma because I definitely felt my grandma's spirit in this because my grandma lived really close to Downey, and I would take her in art school. Actually, I would take her to go to the grocery store in Downey on my days off. And so when I was walking around Downey, I was thinking a lot about my grandma. It was like a really beautiful experience. I got to go to Metro headquarters and sign these and for an event. That was fun. I laugh because I in no way consider myself a graphic designer, but I got commissioned to create a logo design. And learning on the job, I created all this by hand, and then I learned how, as I was doing this, how to vectorize it in Illustrator, and it was pretty cool. Turned into a business card and then into a decal. Then I got asked by Taste Made Digital Media Company to create a logo type for them for Hispanic Heritage Month. And I developed a system where I would draw because I can't get used to drawing in Illustrator like freehand. I don't like the whole vector look. So I draw in Photoshop. So I'll draw by hand first, then I'll scan in my drawings, draw in Photoshop, then I'll live trace it into Illustrator, and then I'll color it. And I like that. This was for a pajama line, and this company approached me with this concept they had to fuse together a children's book with pajamas. And so they wanted to sort of tell a story of a children's book idea onto fabric. And then the product came with a pamphlet, which sort of guided you through the story. And then, you know, with the intention of having it printed on pajamas. And I got to play with surface pattern design, which was exciting. I also got to work with a merchandiser and sort of learn, the how to wrap the fabric around or the imagery around the fabric. And I had to work with like dimensions, and this is what it looks like. the final product. That's my son with the pajamas. And then now I have my second son. So uh, this piece was really cool. It was a really big production, one woman show here. I was approached by the company Nespresso Coffee to come up with this large scale painting for their Houston boutique. And they gave me a few pointers. They wanted NASA to be represented because NASA is in Houston. Be Someone is a slogan that they identify with. It represents the working class, hardworking people. And, you know, the Texas shape. I mean, these were all things that I was thinking of Houston. Like, what does Houston want to see? I was trying to be of service to Houston. I put in their cityscape. We know I love cityscapes. A longhorn bull represents Texas, the Texas shape. You'll see this recycled image because part of the requirement for this piece was to incorporate recycled Nespresso pods into the piece. And so it was quite a production. I was my administrative manager. I wore many different hats for this project. I was responsible for creating cost proposals and budgets. And when it came time to shipping and arranging my travel fare, I had to do it all. I had to hire a fabricator to do this cutout, which I hired an art center friend that I went to school with. So pays off to know people. And so it was, divided into 4 panels, and then that was the cutout mounted on top. And these were those Nespresso pods that I talked about. So they're like these bulbous shapes, that the coffee comes in. Nespresso is really big on recycling. So that was the intention of creating this piece. They wanted to really showcase their pods. And so I cut them up and I embossed them and I cut them into these interesting shapes because I wanted them to be inspired by mosaic um, glass pieces. Um, so I, oh, you'll notice that some of them are kind of sticking up, right? And so once I was done with the piece and had a meeting with the team members, we all agreed that I needed to varnish this piece in a way to protect these pieces and also because we didn't want it to be a safety hazard in the store. So I had to learn how to use resin while I was doing this job, like quickly. So I did a bunch of research, watched a bunch of tutorials, made a bunch of phone calls, called the company Art Resin, and they were so gracious to answer all my questions. And this was a sample that I worked with to make sure that before I, you know, did my resin pours on the actual work that I had tested it and felt comfortable enough. I had to learn how to use a gas torch and get the bubbles out and there's a time frame in which you have to use resin. It was a whole thing and it was a success. It was a lot of work. I had to do 3 layers on each panel. Um, But what was so exciting was once it was put up in the store, you could see this beautiful reflection, from like the other part of the store reflected onto this. It was magic. And I went to Houston and worked with a carpenter to have this piece installed and was just crossing my fingers that it would fit, and it did fit like a glove. And man, the feeling I got after this job, it was just such an amazing feeling. I traveled back home just feeling so good. And so over the past year, I have had this gallery moment that I wasn't really expecting. It just, I feel like for me, my life has taken this organic flow. And of course, I've always thought about gallery. I've always wanted to do gallery, but, you know, um, as somebody that is always just thinking about how to market myself, Gallery has always kind of been a background thought. My good friend was having a outdoor art show, um, with a lot of artists that I really admire. So I participated in that. I was invited. And then Art Center ended up having an alumni art show for a Latinx community. So that was really cool. I got invited to be in that. And it was really wonderful to be able to commune with a lot of, peers, colleagues I hadn't seen for since art school. And following that, the junior college I went to, the gallery director, that was once my art teacher, now the gallery director, asked me to participate in an alumni art show that they were having. So apparently, I'm having an alumni art show moment this year. And that was a really cool opportunity. This piece was displayed in their library, and it was surreal. It was like walking into the library that I spent so much time in my early 20s. And now I'm having this sort of full circle moment with my family in my community college, being in this alumni art show. And after that, I thought, it's been a long time since I've created some of my own personal work. So I just started having fun. I don't have a lot of time to do personal work, but for some reason I had to do this piece. I'm still working on this piece. I like to take my sons to this garden. And so I thought, let me create, you know, an abstracted version of this garden fused together with things that I'm attracted to. There's this abandoned building that I always look at. They've since taken it down, and I'm so glad I took the moment to park my car and take photos of this abandoned building, because I tell you, like 3 days after, they bulldozed it. And so I was like, thank you. My son likes to uh, construct and deconstruct Legos, and he's really good at it. And so I thought, let me incorporate his art into my art. And yeah, this is the 30 by 40 piece. Actually, part of the reason why I even created this was because I was sponsored by Artograph to promote their projectors. And I made this whole little social media reel of promoting their projector. And the cool thing about this projector, trying to think ahead here, is I can use it when I do public art. So I'm always trying to think about, like, how can this carry me into what's next? Um, so they paid me to do the drawing, and then they gave me the art projector. And this is the most current piece I'm working on. It's just a simple commission for a gala. It's going to be auctioned off. And yeah, I threw it in there because, I mean, this is literally what I'm doing right now. It's leading me up to the present moment and what's to come for me. Um, so I'm having this intuitive calling to want to do public art, and I've spent the past few couple of months. I've been taking workshops. It's interesting because that notion of the teacher comes when the student is ready. The moment I started opening my eyes to this feeling that I wanted to do public art, I just felt like all of these opportunities started falling in my lap. There was this 2 month workshop, month and a half workshop that was held once a week, and I took all the classes online. I've taken so much notes. I've gotten so much awareness around public art. I'm taking a workshop this Friday in person to learn about fabrication techniques and working with engineers. And I've applied for artist proposals, call for artist opportunities that are out there for public artists, and thinking about working larger, thinking bigger, working for commissioning agencies, and learning about cost proposals and contingency fees, insurance fees, artist fees, sort of the breakdown of what that looks like. There's a lot of mentals that go into learning all this. I feel like I'm spending more time right now writing and applying for proposals than I'm working creatively, but I'm starting to learn that more of the business of this. And I'm also learning that there's resources out there, and the more I seek them, the more I align with them. And so I'm going to end my talk by saying follow the flow, because you never have any idea where your art's going to take you. What's really cool is that we're all on our own journeys. And, I've remained consistent and grateful. I want to really encourage you to be grateful. Don't compare yourself to anyone else. Just follow your bliss, follow your path. And I'm sure there's going to be times where you feel less than or insecure, and just don't let that story, that narrative take over. Don't feed that voice. Find a way to seek joy, do something else, and keep it moving. So, thank you for listening.
Great, thank you. That was awesome.
Thank you, Ron.